Awambo people are one of the Bantu tribes that migrated southwards to Namibia from the Great Lakes in East Africa, settling between the Kunene and Okavango rivers and moving further south to Oshana, Oshikoto, Omusati, and Ohangwena region. The Awambo people are also called Avambo, Ambo. They include Ndonga, Nganjera, Kwambi, Kwaludi, Kolonghadi, Mbalantu, Ovanda, Kwanyama, Ovambanja. In Angola they are Akafima, Evale, Kwanyama, and Ovambanja. They are the single largest ethnic group in Namibia, accounting for about half of the population. Their language, the Oshiwambo language, belongs to the Niger-Congo family of languages of the southern branch. Despite concerted efforts from Christian missionaries to wipe out what were believed to be sin practices, they have retained many aspects of their cultural practices. They are also found in the southern Angolan province of Cunene, where they are more commonly referred to as Ambo. The Ovambo consist of a number of kindred Bantu ethnic tribes who inhabit what was formerly called Ovamboland. In Angola, they are a minority, accounting for about 2% of the total Angolan population. The Ovambo people reside in the flat, sandy, grassy plains of North Namibia and the Cunene province in South Angola, sometimes referred to as Ovamboland. The Ovambo have adapted to the widely varying seasonal weather patterns with their housing, agriculture, and livestock practices. The Ovakwanyama are the largest sub-tribe. They are believed to have migrated to their current location around the 14th century through Zambia northeast region. They settled near the Angola-Namibia border, then expanded further south in Namibia in the 17th century. They have a close cultural, linguistic, and historical relationship to the Herero people found in more southern parts of Namibia, and Kavango people to their east, settled around the Okavango River. In contrast to most ethnic groups in Africa, their isolated low-density pastoral nomadic lifestyle left the Ovambo people largely unaffected by Swahili, Arab, and European traders before the 19th century. When Germany established a colony in Namibia in 1884, they left the Ovambo people undisturbed. The Germans focused on the southern and coastal regions of the Ovaherero and Nama. Their basic clothing and household utensils depended on what was available to them in their surroundings. The Awambo were known to be highly artistic and skillful people. They were skilled in leather tanning, metalwork, pottery, basketry, beadwork, and wood carving. These crafts were used to produce their clothing and adornments. The costumes worn by the Awambo were complex as they reflected specific information related to clan, gender, and age group, as well as social and marital status. A traditional costume consisted of cattle or goat hide, and ornaments created by ironsmiths, incorporating ivory buttons, oyster shells, and ostrich eggshell. The initial clothes of the Awambo, in particular the women, were basically pieces of tiny leather from cattle that was meant to cover and conceal genital parts. Clothing for women consisted of a leather apron called eteta, which was tied to the body with a belt that was also made from cattle hide called ekwamo. The belt was wound around the hips several times to serve as a pocket. The length and manner in which the leather cloth was hung on the body was determined by the person's age, as well as their marital and social status. Younger girls, for example, wore the shorter etita, which only covered the frontal parts of the genitalia. The eteta was longer for married women and also covered the backside area. But that all changed when missionaries arrived in Ovamboland. Finnish missionaries were agents who imposed European dress styles on the Awambo people through their mission work. They implemented the dramatic transformation of traditional fashion since the turn of the 20th century. The change in attire was initially instigated by the missionaries, who regarded the traditional leather dress of the Awambo to be an expression of sin, paganism. The missionaries felt the need to expose the local people to appropriate clothing. Classes. Awambo were influenced by the missionaries to abandon traditional costumes and were not allowed to smear their bodies with the red ochre, olukula, and were advised not to dress in traditional outfits when attending church services. Instead, they had to wear cotton clothes. So they changed from this one to this. Can you see this? After First World War, Namibia was annexed by the South African government into the Union of South Africa as the territory of Southwest Africa. This brought major changes, with South African plantation, cattle breeding, and mining operations entering the Ovamboland. The Portuguese colonial administration in Angola, who had previously focused on their coastal, northern, and eastern operations, entered southern Angola to form a border with the expanding South African presence. The Ovambo people launched several armed rebellions against South African rule in the 1920s and 1930s, which were all suppressed by the Union Defense Force. The South African apartheid rule was brought into the Ovambaland in 1948. The South African government declared the Ovambaland an independent province in 1973 and appointed chiefs aligned with the South African government's policies. The Ovambo people rejected these developments, and in 1975, the appointed chief minister of Ovambaland was assassinated. In conjunction with the armed SWAPO movement, Namibia and its Ovambo people gained independence from South Africa in 1990. The traditional home is a complex of huts surrounded by a fence of large vertical poles linked by 2 horizontal poles on each side. The complex is a maze with 2 gates, but it is easy to get lost within the homestead. Each hut generally has a different purpose, such as the woman homestead's hut or kitchen area. The Ovambo people lead a settled life, relying mostly on a combination of agriculture and animal husbandry. The staple crops have been millet and sorghum, and beans are another popular crop. In drier regions or seasons, pastoral activity with herds of cattle, goats, and sheep becomes more important. The animal husbandry is not for meat, but primarily as a source of milk. Their food is supplemented by hunting, fishing, and gathering. During the colonial era, the Ovambo were active in elephant hunting for their tusks to supply the ivory demand, and they nearly hunted the elephants in their region to extinction. Members of the royal family of the Ovamboland are known as Akwanekamba, Ovakwaluvala, Ovakwamalanga, Ovakwanime, Akwanyoka, and many more. Only those who belong to this family by birth, through the maternal line, have a claim to chieftainship. The tribes figure their descent by a matrilineal kinship system, with hereditary chiefs arising from the daughter's children, not the sons. Polygamy is accepted, with the first wife recognized as the senior. They are Ovawambo people of Namibia.